Welcome to another episode of the Two Shots Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Garcia, and today we're going to be joined by our friend and good, let's say, good reporter for the San Antonio Spurs and contributor to Pounding the Rock, the one and only Noah Magaro-George. Thanks for joining us, Noah.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I always enjoy talking Spurs basketball with you.
Yeah, no problem, man. And you know what? We have kind of a new look today that we're kind of rolling out with, so people might have noticed the countdown timer. Now we have a new set of graphics, and what we're going to be talking about is we're going to be talking about Jakob Poeltl. And let's be honest, he's not everybody's favorite player right now thus far, early into the season. A lot of Spurs fans have been displeased, let's put it like that, with the play of one Jakob Poeltl. Jakob Poeltl signed that contract in the offseason. Spurs fans were kind of hopeful, because we got him at a discount. He looked decent enough, coming off the bench, backing up Marcus Aldridge, sometimes maybe switching depending on what Coach Pop wanted to put him out there as a, power forward center, depending on our injuries. But, you look at him this season and he just hasn't seemed quite the same as far as the same type of player. He's kind of been a little hesitant. People, again, have noticed that he hasn't been too forthcoming when it comes to being aggressive and dunking the ball. They're like, dunk the ball, Jakob, dunk the ball. Even Sean Elliott's always calling him out during games. He's like, 2 hands, dunk the ball, go up strong. But aside from that, from his offensive production or lack thereof, I got to be honest with you, Noah, and we kind of talked about this. He does some things out there on the court that kind of go unnoticed by San Antonio Spurs fans. And one of those things is his ability to set screens so well, set picks for his teammates, and when he's out there on the court, and it seems like sometimes he's out there with that second unit of Patty, he's out there with Rudy Gay. I think the offense just flows a little bit better when he's out there setting those hard picks, those screens, just helping his teammates break free and get some, production on the offensive end, even though he's not putting up a ton of points, but that's not why he's out there. I wanted to bring this up to you now. Tell the fans the good and the bad about Jakob Poeltl and what he means to this team.
Sure, and I think fans have every right to be upset with Jakob Poeltl this early in the season. He hasn't been very good on the offensive end, and yes, his role is not that of a scorer or someone who's going to space the floor as a shooter, but he's still been a little bit disappointing, right? He hasn't finished very well around the rim for as large as he is, and that dunk complaint, I've said in the past, it's a little bit overblown, but the finishing is still an issue. Whether he dunks or does a layup or, a floater, those need to drop more often than they are, and he just looks a little bit timid to start the season, and not just on the offensive end, but on the defensive end as well. He's not as aggressive. He seems to be getting in early foul trouble, or even when he isn't in foul trouble, that seems like it might be something on his mind. So I just wanted to start with the negatives so that we could move into more positive territory. So yes, he hasn't looked good from a traditional box score standpoint, right? The points aren't there, the rebounds aren't super high, the blocks aren't really there. But what he is doing is something that you mentioned. He is setting screens, and he's setting them really well. He sets one of the hardest screens. He's great at timing his screens. He gets his teammates open. He can, if he can start finishing and when he rolls to the rim, that'll be huge. And right now he's 12th in screen assists and 12th in screen points in the league, the entire league. So that's pretty huge. There's a ton of centers playing. If we're going to say there's 30 starting centers and there's 30 backup centers, and he's a backup center himself and he's 12th in both of those categories, that's really good. And for those who don't really know what screen assists are, it's every time you set a screen and it gets a player open and they score, that's a screen assist. And screen points are just the points that come from those screen assists, right? So he's 12th in both of those categories. He gets guys open, and we've seen it. He sets a screen for Patty. He sets a screen for DeJounte. He might set a screen for, Derek once he comes back, and they're able to roll to the rim, or they get an open shot on the perimeter once a big man switches on to them. And that's invaluable for the team. And aside from that, he's actually a very good passer. If you look at it, his turnovers aren't very high. He's one of the better passers as a big man in this league. Per 36, a top 10 assisting center in the league. And yeah, per 36 can kind of be a trivial statistic, right? It's per 36. It's not exactly what they're doing every time out, but scaled, it looks good. So I think with Jakob, you got to be a little patient because last season he started the season off slow. He had the yips around the rim. He didn't come out of the gates and have a ton of blocks. It wasn't really till we got probably past the first quarter of the season that he just started taking off. He looked confident. He was blocking a ton of shots. He was taking advantage of playing against second units, and I expect him to do that again at some point this season. It's just a matter of finding rhythm, and we see it with every player, and maybe this is what Jakob does. Maybe this is his thing, starting cold and finishing strong. So let's hope that's the case. But for people who are saying he's unplayable, that just isn't true. The box score, even in the box score, is plus minus. And again, that is a trivial statistic as well. But with context, considering who he's playing with, who he's playing against, he's been very helpful for the Spurs. And it's only going to get better once he finds his rhythm, once he finds that groove.
Yeah, I think so too. We got to be a little bit patient with him. Let's see how he performs. I think we're kind of a little bit too harsh on him at times because it's early in the season. Let's put it like that. It's not like we're in the midst of making a run for the playoffs. We don't even know if that's going to happen, given the way that this team has been a little bit inconsistent on the defensive end. But one of the things that you've liked, as you alluded to, the team looks better out there when Jakob Poeltl is setting screens and he's helping set those picks, because what he's doing is he's adding motion to the offense. And as we have seen with the San Antonio Spurs, when that ball sticks and they just become stagnant and standing around looking at each other, who's going to do an ISO play? Primarily, it's DeMar DeRozan who's kind of bailing him out in those types of situations. They start squandering leads, or they start falling behind, and it's because there's no motion to that offense. There's nobody coming out setting that hard pick, nobody coming out setting that hard screen to help your player break free, create some space so you can get a quality jumper or a quality shot. And I see a lot of that out of Jakob. Primarily, we're going to start diving into, a little later on, some of the plays that we've seen when he frees up Patty Mills and lets him break free for a three-pointer or an open jumper. Same thing happened with DeJounte Murray. It happens with Lonnie Walker. It happens with Kelden Johnson. A lot of people don't understand that in the context of that play, the only reason that play even took place is because Jakob started setting that hard screen or setting that hard pick so they could start their transition, going to the rim and getting that open lane. Because not only does he set the screen, but then he starts boxing out his man right away, and that frees up the lane. And, of course, you see Keldon or Lonnie break away, and they have a spectacular layup, a good dunk, or an and one, and that was all started by one Jakob Poeltl. So he does a little bit of the things out there that go unnoticed. I just want Spurs fans to kind of, look and see what he does. He does have value. I understand what they're saying, though. Dunk the ball. Put up some points, because in the absence of one DeMar DeRozan, we've needed a little bit more of an offensive punch from this team, and Jakob Poeltl does not give you that. And I think that's the one faux pas that a lot of these fans have. And hopefully, like you said, Noah, he will get better in that regard. But thus far early in the season, I really don't know what to make of his lack of offensive production. I mean, what can you attribute it to?
Well, first off, that's not really his role in this team. He's never going to be a guy who's going to be a primary option. He's not a back to the basket player. He's not a face up player. He can't really put the ball on the floor. He doesn't have a ton of vertical pop off the ground either. Like if he's on a line drive to the basket and there's no one in his way, then yeah, he can rise up and he can dunk. But in a crowd, he doesn't have a lot of pop. And that's not really his fault. That's just how his body is made. That's the God-given athleticism he has, or lack of athleticism that he has. And, I don't know that we're ever going to be able to look at him and say, hey, this guy's going to get us 10 a night or 12 a night. He's probably someone who's always going to give you between 6 or 8 points per game at his peak. And you're right. He does bring things outside of that. We've talked about, he hasn't had a ton of blocks, right? He's really lacked in that department. I think he hasn't had a block in 7 of the 11 games that the Spurs have played this season. But if you look at what he's doing outside of that, he has the most contested shots on the roster, right? He's contested 107 shots this season at the rim. That's 20 more than any other player on the Spurs. And on possessions where he's the primary defender, he's holding people to just 44% from the field. Now, could that number be better? Sure, but as far as defenders go, primary defenders especially, that's a really good number. There's only 2 players who are playing more minutes than him who have a better defensive field goal percentage on the Spurs, and that would be kind of a surprise, Rudy Gay and Patty Mills. But they also don't guard the best players most times out, and Jakob is responsible for protecting that rim every single possession if someone gets there. So I think, no, the blocks aren't there. The fouls are a bit up, but it's going to come. It is going to come eventually on the defensive end. Now, like you said, offense, will that happen? I don't really think so. It's not his role. That's not his skill set, but he could occasionally have a 20-point game here and there, like we've seen maybe once or twice a season when he's able to take advantage, but that's just not his game. So for fans who are expecting that, they really need to kind of scale back their expectations.
Yeah, scale back the expectations, but at the end of the day, we just need to see the Spurs win. And currently right now, I believe, going and looking at the standings for the Western Conference, per ESPN, the San Antonio Spurs are currently 8th in the Western Conference. They're percentage points really at this point behind the Golden State Warriors. So they need to keep up with their winning ways, and they have a back-to-back coming up against the Rockets, who are going to be a new look Rockets now that they've added Victor Oladipo and they've gotten rid of one James Harden, which it was funny to me that Boogie Cousins had some insight to shed on that, or to share on social media about the locker room situation. So Spurs are going to be going up against the Rockets in a back-to-back, and that right there is an opportunity for them to make some headway in the Western Conference. Let's hope they can keep up their winning ways, and Jakob Poeltl plays a little bit better. We just need him to, look, man, at the end of the day, I'm not expecting him to put up a double-double every night, but if we can get at least 4 or 6 points out of the guy, I'm happy. If you get anything out of him points-wise, it's a good thing. It's going to help the team win the game, So you just need to see him do a little bit better. Sometimes he's late on his box outs, late on the defensive rotations and transition defense. Sometimes he's a little bit late coming from behind, trying to catch up with his man. And at that situation, it's basically, they're on the break and they're going to go in for a dunk or a layup because Jakob already was late on the switch. You just want to see him get a little bit better on that regard. But we're going to go ahead and play a quick video here that I thought was really good. It was Coach Pop talking about the growth of one DeJounte Murray, which that is the player that we're going to talk about next. So let me go ahead and play that for us right away.
He's figuring out how to be a point guard. He's starting to, find people on the court. He threw a great pass to Patty Mills for a 3, but he's figuring out, how to get the ball to his teammates, figuring out time and score more. But, in that position, when you got the ball a lot, the coach is going to be on you to be more and more perfect and understand the game more and more. And he's a good receiver. He welcomes the info.
Bigger picture for me always been be willing to learn, be willing to work, and just grow every year. It's a journey, and I'm going to continue to grow. Like I told him, I want him to stay on me through the good and bad, and I know it's just going to help me as my career goes and grows.
But I'm loving seeing DJ grow as a point guard. It's really impressive, and it continues to impress me each game, and he'll continue to grow in that way as well.
So that's what Coach Pop was talking about. He was kind of talking about the growth of one DeJounte Murray this season. And not only him, but Patty Mills also had some kind things to say about DeJounte Murray. Spurs fans do not have kind things to say about DeJounte Murray. And I don't understand why. If you look at him coming into this season, he's been playing solid. He might have a game here or there, where he's not scoring in double digits. It happens. You can't have these guys going off every night. Sometimes matchup-wise, it just isn't working for them. It's not a good matchup, conducive to them putting up, double digits every night. It happens, or they're just not feeling it. The ball's not falling for them. Every player goes through that. But I think as a point guard, DeJounte Murray has shown growth. He's gotten a lot better. He's gotten better at his decision-making abilities out there on the court. And his shot looks so good this season. His jumper's looking smooth. His ability to kind of stretch that defense a little bit and knock down threes. And not only that, but he looks great in the open court. The speed, the athleticism that he has. You just can't ask any more from him. And not only does he do that as far as getting out in transition and running the break, but he's also a great rebounder, one of the better rebounders on this team. And that's kind of, you just got to take a pause and think about that for a second. He's not one of your tallest, bulkiest guys out there, but he's scrappy. He has long arms. He has that vertical leap, so he can get up there and he can get those rebounds, so much so that he can give the big men on the opposing team a run for their money when it comes to rebounding. So you got to tip your hat to DeJounte. He's a warrior. He's out there battling. So I've liked what I've seen out of DeJounte Murray thus far into the season. What about you, Noah? What have you thought about DeJounte Murray?
Yeah, I'll do the same thing I did with Jakob, where I kind of start with the bad and then we'll move on to the good, because I think there's way more good than there is bad. So DeJounte Murray, I've said it for a while, I think he's kind of been miscast a bit as like a lead guard sort of initiator. You know, he doesn't have the best court vision. He's not always the best decision maker, but those are two areas in which he's improved drastically this season. His turnovers are down, his assist numbers are up, and he's playing more minutes, so that's going to happen, I think, naturally. But the fact that his volume has increased while his efficiency has increased and his turnovers have gone down, that's a very good sign. And one of the other things that I really like from him early on this season was his ability to finish around the rim. You know, through the first 8 or so games, he was finishing above 70% at the rim. And I said, you know, I don't think that's sustainable. The last couple of games, we've seen him finish sub 40% around the rim. So not good. I don't think he's going to regress that heavily. I think we're going to probably see him go somewhere between, you know, maybe 62 to 65% at the rim. But that would be a career high for DeJounte Murray, whose previous career high was 55% at the rim. And if he can get it to 62 to 65%, that's really solid. Shows me a lot of growth. He looks good in transition. And I know I said I would start with the bad and move on to the good, but that's mostly because I already said all the bad I have to say. You know, is he perfect? No. Has he been one of the, you know, top 10 or even 20 best starting point guards in the league? Maybe not, but he's been very good for the Spurs team, and more than just a facilitating or scoring way, because I don't think he is also a guy who you give the ball to and say, get me 20 points tonight. I think he's a guy who plays off your primary option, who can get you 15 to 16, which is exactly what he's done. He's excellent at high pointing a rebound. You know, he just, the timing there, the ability to leap and get that rebound and at its peak over big men, that's incredibly impressive. And then on the other end, he's still one of the elite perimeter defenders in this league. So you combine all that together, the impact that he brings to the Spurs on the floor, I just don't see how you can be that upset with what you've seen DeJounte Murray do thus far, because he's been a definite plus and that you could do much worse. And I'm not saying, well, you know, you shouldn't be upset because, you know, you could do worse. But I'm saying you should be happy with what you've got at this moment, because it's much better than we saw even a season ago, 2 seasons ago. It's showing continual growth, and that's promising. He's still pretty young, so he's another guy Spurs fans should probably applaud, at least give a little pat on the back early in the season, because he has been a solid player.
Yeah, you know, they draw a lot of comparisons when they look at DeJounte to one Derek White. You know, we have a lot of Spurs fans who are in love with Derek White. And for, you know, the obvious reasons. He is one of the better point guards for the San Antonio Spurs. You like his defense, you like his playmaking ability, and his court vision. You know, he's a very solid point guard for us. And when they compare, they're like, well, it's obvious that Derek is the better of the two when it comes to point guards. While Derek might have better decision-making ability and court vision, you know, and his ability to run the offense is a little better than DeJounte's, their games are a little different. You know, you can't really compare the two because they do different things out there on the court. However, when they're on the court together, I think that's when they're at their best, because they can play off of their weaknesses and they really show their strengths, because both are solid defenders. While, you know, DeJounte might be the better rebounder, Derek is a great defender, you know, drawing charges, you know, using his body, just throwing it out there, kind of Manu-esque at times, just doesn't care. I'm going to draw the charge. I'm going to do whatever I got to do to help this team win. So I think it's unfounded at times. You know, you're comparing the two, but they play a different style of basketball. So I think that is an unfair assessment at times by fans. And what do you think?
Yeah, I kind of think Derek White is almost the antithesis of DeJounte Murray, whereas DeJounte Murray is excellent athlete in terms of just his straight line speed is off the charts. He's very quick. He's a better leaper. He's a better rebounder. He can find the open man, but he's not a great, facilitator. He's okay. He's good in that aspect where you have Derek White, who very much uses his mind to his advantage. He knows how to position himself to draw charges. He's great with using verticality at the rim to be one of the best shot blocking guards in the NBA. And then he's just a better decision maker. He's patient. He lets plays develop a little bit better, but they both have their strengths and weaknesses. Like you said, another example would be DeJounte Murray's a better standstill shooter at 3-point range, right? But Derek White has shown the ability to shoot off the dribble. So they have different strengths, different weaknesses. And, I don't know if they're going to be, in the end, a great complement to each other on the offensive end. I think that's yet to be seen, right? We don't have a big sample size of that. But their defense, I think we can look at that and go, it's better to have two guys who are all NBA defense caliber players out there together than it is, a DeJounte and a Bryn like we had a season ago, or a Derek and a Marco a season ago. It'll be better on the defensive end to have those two guys together. And if that's the case and you're figuring out as an offense, I'm okay with that. I'm happy to see them kind of figure it out. DeJounte struggled a little bit in the bubble when he wasn't having the ball in his hands as much. His shooting percentages went down. He just didn't look as engaged, as comfortable, but I think that's going to come with time. And if it doesn't, this is the perfect season to find that out. But at the end of the day, I can see this potentially working at the very least on the defensive end. And if it ends up working on the offensive end, then you have something potentially special in the backcourt.
Yeah, and I think we have, when they're on the court together, I think we have one of the better defensive backcourts in the NBA when you have DeJounte and Derek playing out there in tandem. As you stated, both great defenders. They might not give you that, that offensive punch right away. But the thing is that you can turn defense into offense, playing those passing lanes well, knocking the ball away, getting steals, getting your team ready to score some easy baskets in transition on the break. I mean, you can't ask for anything more from these guys. That's what they give you when they're on the court together. So I look forward to the return of one Derek White. We only got to see him this one game this season, and unfortunately, he got injured again. So, I'm just looking for him to get better. Let's be cautious this time, bringing him back. And I look forward to see him in the lineup and seeing what this team can really do at full strength from the point guard position. They're going to only get better from that point on. And it's going to be exciting because maybe he'll come back right away, right when the Spurs need him the most, when they're trying to make a push for the playoffs, So, we're going to see what's going to happen because the West right now is pretty stacked. So any little advantage you can get is always a plus. There's not a lot of space separating the teams from 5 through 8. They're all 6 and 5. Percentage points is really what separates them at the end of the day. So we need Derek back ASAP.
Yeah, I would definitely agree.
Yeah, let me go ahead and play this next video that we had. I thought it was a really good video. It was about Patty Mills and saying, how he came into this season, the mindset. And not only that, but also from a physical perspective, him just working on things. And he even talks about what does he still have left in the tank, So let's go ahead and see what FIBA Patty has to say.
Now Mills, he fires, count it. Good day, mate.
I have that time over the last few months to step away, self-reflect and see where what I still have, in the tank to be able to grow and develop and learn. And I feel like these next 9-10 months as it goes into the Tokyo Olympics, for whatever reason, I'm more determined than ever to be able to play at my best. And with the Tokyo Olympics coming up, I think that has helped me be in the mindset that I'm in right now. And I've had the best preparation that I've had personally over the last 4 months. I'm in a great place mentally, great place physically, and coming in right now ready to, as I said, make up for not being able to make.
So that was Patty Mills talking about his mindset and, basically his physical abilities that he has coming into this season. He's just felt great. He stated in the video, he felt ready to play. I think even when he was talking with the media on the media day, he was saying that he still feels like he has a lot left in the tank, that he feels really good, rejuvenated coming into the season, not only physically, but mentally, because we got to factor that in as well. it's a long season. Mentally and physically, you get exhausted. So that's one thing that Patty Mills is letting Spurs fans know, and kind of letting you inside, his mind, that it takes a toll on your body, not mentally, but also physically. So I think he still has a lot to give to this team. He's looked great coming into this season. He plays with a ton of energy out there in the court. I mean, he's just all over the place, and he plays great defense as well. I mean, he draws his own charges here and there, and he's just scrappy. He's a scrappy player, and you love the fact that he's been able to knock down those threes this season. He's looked great, out there. To me, I just love seeing Patty out there. Every time I see him on the court, I get excited because he's going to bring the energy. So I just love seeing him out there when he's playing every night coming off that bench. What have you thought about Patty Mills this season?
Yeah, I mean, he's been pretty good, off the bench. I think he's possibly even that sixth man of the year candidate. Now, I think the Spurs would have to be better. They'd have to be winning more games for him to have a legitimate shot. But the numbers say he's been one of the best players off the bench. His plus minus is really high. His 3-point percentage is up there with the leaders in the NBA. His points per game are one of the highest off the bench. And, he is playing more like that FIBA Patty. Now, he kind of made that transition last season where he was more off ball. He was running around, not really initiating the offense, but being an off ball terror, right? And he's continued that to an even larger degree this season. Now, I think some of his defensive numbers are kind of misleading. He allows only, I think, about 35% field goal percentage to his opponents. But I also think the Spurs scheme so that he can be on the worst offensive player and the smallest offensive player every single night. Now, it's not really a big deal when he's playing like a Steph Curry. I'm sure he can hold his own, right? He's small. Steph's not a great athlete. Steph is not going to, dunk over you or just blow by you with their speed. So that's not an issue. But when he's playing bigger guys, they do try to hide him. So I think it's a little bit skewed in his favor, but I think he's been good. He is scrappy. He brings a lot of energy. He's a spark plug off the bench. But my issue is I hope he doesn't regress. Because last season we saw this super hot start from him, right? And I wrote last season a piece about it being an offensive renaissance for Patty Mills. He's averaging the highest points per game of his career. He's shooting nearly 50% from three, and then he finishes the season shooting below 40% from three, only about 44% from the field. And he seems to do this a lot where he has hot starts and then kind of tapers off. So I'm interested to see with this increased load on a shorter off season on a compressed schedule, are we going to see this drop-off that we usually see from him, or is it going to be consistent production? Because I think one of the things he's been excellent at since hitting San Antonio is working on his body. He came into San Antonio from Portland kind of a little overweight in terms of basketball players, right? He had a little extra to him, and now he's chiseled. He's lost a ton of weight. He looks thinner. He looks like he's in excellent shape. I mean, he's out there playing a career high minutes per game, and he never looks tired. The guy looks like the Energizer Bunny out there. He just is ready to keep playing. He's ready for every loose ball. And I think that's going to be huge for the Spurs. Regardless if he regresses as a shooter or as a scorer, his energy and his ability to have that be a contagious aspect of his game that his teammates feed off of that's going to be huge for the Spurs. So I'm happy with what I see from Patty. He's a guy who I say it all the time, but by the time he's gone, I hope his jersey's in the rafter. One of my favorite players. There's just not a lot else I can say about Patty. Just a joy to watch, and I really hope he's here for the long run.
Yeah, me too. I hope he retires as a San Antonio Spur. That's what fans would love. We didn't get to see that with Tony Parker. Hopefully we get to see that with Patty Mills. So in other words, just enjoy FIBA Patty right now. He's been playing outstanding. I just don't want it to end. But we're going to go ahead and move on here, and we're going to talk about a play in particular that we saw against the Spurs and OKC. And it was a Lonnie Walker assist to Kelden Johnson. I'm going to go ahead and play that. I'm going to bring it on the screen right now for us.
An assistant on his staff
so
a year
on this
ago.
particular play, you can see that
Billy
Lonnie
for
Walker
bringing him along. He's been with this organization since 2014 as Kelden Johnson gets an and one on his drive to the basket.
Basically goes into the lane for an uncontested layup.
Oh,
except that George Hill actually hit him on the way up, so he was able to absorb the contact and still finish the play. So that was basically sending him to the strike. What I liked about that is you see that motion to the Spurs offense. They're not stagnant. They're not standing around. They're actually moving, and they're finding ways to get to the rim and be aggressive. you can't say enough things about Kelden Johnson this season. He's fearless.
Keldon, just to
he's just going and driving to the rim.
Just terrific focus.
His ability just to be able to absorb that contact because he is so strong.
Billy for bringing him
he's getting sent to the free throw line, and more times than not, Noah, he's actually knocking down those free throws, which is helping the team. And that's one of the things that's really surprised me about this team as a whole, is their ability to hit their free throws.
Keldon,
this Spurs team, if we go back to last season, they were really good from the free throw line. This season, however, they came in and they're on a tear. They're they're knocking down their free throws. They're averaging, I think, somewhere in the neighborhood of this season, it might be in the 70s, 80% from the free throw line. They're probably one of the better teams right now from the stripe. And you look at your young core out there, and in particular, Kelden Johnson, and what he's able to do.
On his staff a year ago,
given it's just a small sample size, Noah,
Billy for bringing
you
him along.
love the growth of Kelden Johnson, and this is only his second year. What do you have to say about him?
On his drive to the basket.
I think Kelden Johnson is a really interesting player, especially considering he was drafted so late. And when I took a look at that class, because I've been scouting the last probably 2 or 3 draft classes, I had Kelden Johnson ranked as the 17th best player in his class. And when he fell to 29th to the Spurs, I was like, what's wrong? There's got to be like a medical issue, a character issue. But I watched him play at Kentucky. He was a dog at Kentucky. He was getting in people's grills as a defender. He was knocking down 3-point shots, and he was, I think, their second leading scorer. And he really wasn't like the featured player within their offense. So it left me confused. What are people seeing that I'm not seeing, that he fell to 29 and then he came to the Spurs? He excelled in the G League. He excelled in the bubble. He's been awesome to start this season. And it's like, I think a lot of teams might have just been underrating what he brings to the table. And he's a great kid. A great kid. We can see that. The Spurs would not be pushing him in the forefront, kind of making him a pseudo face of the franchise early on if they didn't think he was a good kid with great values, right? They're not going to draft him if they don't think he has high character. And aside from that, his game has been really advanced for someone who only has 31 games or 30 games under his belt. For all intents and purposes, this may as well be his rookie season. So I'm really impressed with what I've seen from Keldon. Now, some fans have said, oh, he's a superstar. He's going to be a superstar. I'd pump the brakes a little bit on that. That's some high expectation. There's only about 10 superstars at any given time in the NBA. Maybe he has all-star potential. Maybe it's kind of fringe all-star potential. But regardless of what you think of his future, his present has been incredibly bright. He has been one of the top scoring players from his draft class. He's the top rebounder, the second top rebounder on the Spurs. I think he has about 7.5 rebounds per game. And he's out there every night kind of being like a big Patty Mills, like a big-bodied Patty Mills. He brings the energy. He's not ever going to back down on the defensive end. He's a fearless driver, although he hasn't really finished that well at the rim this season. And I don't expect that to continue. I think he will get better as he starts drawing more calls, being able to knock those shots down, because he has been a good finisher, even going back to his AAU days, his high school days, his college days. He's always been a good finisher. I think that will come. But when we look at Kelden Johnson and say, what has he done through 11 games? He's done a lot more than I'm sure anyone on draft night expected. He's already, to me, one of the steals of that draft.
Yeah, if we look at what he's done this season, Noah, he's averaging 13.5 points a game, 2.4 assists. He's shooting 44.6% from the field, 37.1% because he doesn't take a lot of threes. His free throw shooting percentage, though, as I had alluded to, 82.4% on the season. We're barely getting started into the season. But he's moving in the right direction. Again, if he's putting his head down, he's being aggressive, and he's going to the rim, and he gets fouled, you can count on him to make his free throws. And that's one of the things that I like about this young core, their ability to knock down their free throws when they get fouled. It just helps the team when they become stagnant from the offensive end, as we saw them the other night, where they just couldn't find their shot, to start the game. But as soon as Sean Elliott came in and said, sometimes you just got to put your head down and go to the free throw line, that's exactly what happened. They started being more aggressive. They started going to the free throw line, and they started getting points on the board. So if your outside shot's not falling, you got to be aggressive. And you can't say enough good things about one Kelden Johnson. He's looked great coming into this season. I know the ceiling is going to be high for him. How high that ceiling is still to be determined. But if you look at him in his second season with the San Antonio Spurs, as you had stated, we could have a future all-star in the making here. So I'm excited to see his growth and what he can do throughout the rest of the season. So another video that we're going to bring up right now is going to be the video that, again, we know that the Spurs have some issues on the defensive end. They're not very consistent. At times they have defensive breakdowns. They have miscommunications, miscues out there. And I want to show a play that kind of highlights that. So here we go, Noah.
And the Thunder will have the final possession. Diallo.
On this play in particular, you kind of see OKC starting to break, and I think it was I forgot his name, Delipo or Diapo or something. I forgot his name, Noah. Yeah, there you go. There you go. He gets free, and there's like 3 Spurs players there. You know, and you, again, Jakob is late coming up, and you have 2 Go ahead.
Sorry. No, I was just going to say, looking at that, I think Jakob, I wouldn't blame him for that. I'd actually look at Rudy Gay and say, how did you, with positioning, he was in an advantageous position. You know, how do you let a guy get by you? Because Jakob Poeltl's not keeping up with that guy. He's going to do his best in transition, but he's not, you know, he's mobile, but he's not really fast. So he's not going to keep up with Hamidou Diallo, who has the NBA record for, you know, vertical jump. So I'm sure he's also an exceptional, you know, speedy athlete. And you look at Rudy Gay, and this is one of the things that it really kind of I'm hung up on with Rudy Gay. It's concrete feet, right? It looks like he's got cinder blocks on his feet. His hips have kind of become a little more stiff as he's aged, and that's going to happen when you get older. It's just going to happen, and he's not able to stop. And the thing that actually makes me laugh on this play is not even the miscues by the Spurs, but Hamidou Diallo is so focused and lasered in on getting to the rim. There's another guy in Devin Vassell who comes and closes in on the help, but he's just a little bit late. That's not really his fault. Hamidou Diallo has a guy wide open on the 3-point line. He could have kicked it out too. Doesn't matter. He finished it. I just thought it was kind of a funny looking play altogether. It was kind of a weird, ugly play from both teams. I mean, Hamidou Diallo did a good job of turning around Rudy Gay and just changing directions and knowing, you know, Rudy Gay's not going to be able to shift his hips and move his feet well enough to keep up. But this is a thing that we've seen consistently in transition, is like guys aren't communicating or guys aren't putting the effort, or in Rudy's case, I don't even think it was effort. It was just inability to keep up with a guy who's like almost half his age at this point. So it's something that they need to shore up for sure, because that transition defense, while they're getting a ton of points, you know, off fast breaks, you know, off turnovers themselves, they're giving up quite a few, you know, fast break points to the other team, you know, and that's something they need to cut down on as well.
Yeah. You know, in that play too, you can see Patty Mills already knew. As soon as they made that pass, his head kind of went back. He was like, oh, you know, it's going to happen, you know, and he saw Rudy Gay over there. I mean, Rudy Gay's trying to do the best he can, but he just doesn't have that lateral quickness anymore. You know, he's kind of flat-footed out there, and it's a hard task trying to defend somebody while you're on your heels. You know, that's a young man's game. It's not an old man's game.
And you know what? I've kind of dogged on Rudy, but Rudy's been really good in this new defensive role where they've put him on bigger wings and smaller big guys, right? He's still faster than a lot of the big guys, and he's still stronger than a lot of the smaller small forwards. He's done a good job in that aspect. So I will give him a pat on the back, because he's actually leading the Spurs in defensive field goal percentage. He's been almost all NBA defense if you just look at the numbers and not at the tape. Obviously, you need context with the tape, but Rudy definitely deserves a pat on the back for as well as he's done in the role they've asked of him, you know. So
we have one of our viewers that left a comment here, Nacio Spurs. He's watching on Twitter, and he says, 4 poor defensive players on San Antonio. He goes Rudy, DeRozan, Aldridge, and Lyles, and soft Poeltl, and some of them have to play a bunch of minutes. You have some players that aren't really known for defense. You know, LaMarcus Aldridge, let's be honest, he's not really known for his defensive presence, and neither is DeMar DeRozan. You know, Trey Lyles, we haven't really seen a lot of him this season, and that just might be, you know, for whatever reason, Coach Pop has decided to go with other players. You know, matchup-wise, he thinks that the lineups that he has right now gives the Spurs the best chances to come away with the victory. Jakob Poeltl, we've already kind of talked about him. So I can kind of see exactly kind of what he's saying. You know, Rudy Rudy is actually one of the better defenders from that second unit. He matches up against some of the other bigs from the opposing team, and he's kind of able to hold his own in the half-court set. I think what he gets in trouble with is in the open court when they're on the break because he doesn't have that lateral quickness. But in the half-court set, he's able to hold his own against some of these bigger players from the opposing teams. What do you think?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Rudy Gay has a 7'2" wingspan, so he plays bigger than his height is, and like I said, he has the lowest defensive field goal percentage on the Spurs this year as a primary defender, and that's not really, to me, at least to this point, not an accident. He's done a really good job on Anthony Davis. He did a really good job against LeBron James. He did a good job against Karl Anthony Towns. Even though Karl Anthony Towns had a good game in whole, most of his points came against LaMarcus Aldridge. So, aside from Rudy Gay and Poeltl, I'd agree with them, but Rudy Gay and Poeltl have been really good, even if the, traditional stats, and I think people get too caught up in looking at blocks per game or steals per game. There's more to defense than blocks and steals per game. I mean, Hassan Whiteside averaged like 3.4 blocks per game last season. Yeah. He's arguably one of the worst defenders in the NBA. Most of the time, he has no idea where he is. He's terrible in the pick and roll. He doesn't know when to rotate. He's out of position a lot. His footwork is awful. But he's so big. He's got a 7 wingspan. He can stand near the rim and block it if someone comes and challenges him. So there's more to the game than blocking a ball or stealing the ball. Now, yes, they may create turnovers, but if you had these stats that said how many points these players allow per game, you'd go, wow, those blocks don't mean that much in the grand scheme of things. And I think if you look at Rudy Gay and you look at Jakob Poeltl on tape, they've been pretty good this season, even if they're not getting those blocks. Now, LaMarcus and Rudy and DeMar, yeah, they're not so good, and that's not great, but hey, that's not really what they've been known for. I'm not saying that they can't be held accountable for that. They definitely need to, but if we were expecting them to be all NBA defenders coming into the year, then our expectations were way off the mark because they've never been that.
Yeah, they haven't been that. Ignacio says, yes, playing as a power forward, great, and versus the big guys, but on screens and switches, he suffers a lot. He's talking about Gay.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, Rudy Gay does suffer on screens and switches. His lateral mobility has been completely, not completely, but mostly sapped at this point in his career. He still does a lot of ball watching for a veteran who should know not to do that. So yeah, I agree with that. And if that's what we're talking about, then sure. Yeah, Rudy Gay, like I said, sometimes the numbers are a little bit misleading. I think he's been good against big guys, but you're right. He's been bad against switches. He's been bad, rotating over as a help defender sometimes. So yeah, I agree with him.
So we're going to see one more video here.
For bringing him along. He's been with this organization since.
This is a Kelden Johnson drive that we're looking at right now. And again, I think it's the same one that I had played earlier. But on this one, again, we were just talking about the strength of one Kelden Johnson. I meant to play another one, I believe. I think this one was going to be of one Lonnie Walker is what I wanted to put up there. But I guess I just didn't load up that particular highlight. So I'm going to go ahead and transition out. And we can go ahead and talk about Lonnie Walker, and the growth of one Lonnie Walker this season. Lonnie Walker has actually looked really good in the absence of one DeMar DeRozan. He's kind of stepped up, quite a bit, where he's been, I guess, the focal point of the Spurs offense, in some games where he's actually been producing at a high level. You love his aggressiveness that he has out there on the court, and his ability to knock down shots. He's still unsure of himself from time to time. I saw in the play that I was going to play to show everybody was he had a 3-point shot that he was going to make, and he kind of hesitated, and then he just stepped right into that 3-pointer, and he knocked it down. And I think that's where we're at with Lonnie Walker sometimes. He hesitates a little bit. I think he needs to build up more of that confidence because he needs to trust his abilities. He can knock down these shots. He's one of the fastest, most athletic guys out there on the court, bar none. His athleticism and speed is off the charts. And I think he just needs to build up that confidence a little bit more. And I think it's coming. You love the growth that you've seen out of Lonnie Walker this season. Going back into last season, he had that hesitation, I think, a little bit more. He was a little unsure of himself, hesitated quite a bit. I think this season we're seeing him really start to come into his own, making better decisions and feeling confident. You want to see that out of one of your younger players and one of your better younger players out there. And a lot of Spurs fans had this argument to kind of, I guess, substantiate what they're seeing out of Lonnie Walker this season. They're actually saying, Lonnie Walker, could he be our future closer in the making? So I'm like, that they bring up a point. Some of the Spurs fans are kind of astute in what their observations are during, game highlights and whatnot. What do you think, Noah? What have you thought about the growth? And do you think Lonnie Walker could be the Spurs' future closer?
Yeah, I mean, I think Lonnie Walker has shown pretty tremendous growth from when he first came into the system to today, right? And I think a lot of it this season is not just that he wasn't able to do some of these things last year, but that he didn't have the opportunity to, right? He was playing behind Bryn, playing behind Marco, getting snatched from games the second he made a mistake. And this year, Pop really hasn't done that. I mean, we haven't really seen him chew out Lonnie as often. And I mean, Lonnie's still making some silly mistakes out there, but he's not getting pulled from games. He's getting an opportunity to learn on the fly. And I think that's been really good for his development, right? You know, he looks less hesitant. He's finishing better at the rim. He's knocking down 3-point shots at the same percentage, but at a higher volume, which is always a good sign. And, overall, I think as a passer, that's another aspect where people go, well, what does he do besides shoot? What does he do besides score? Well, his passing has been pretty good. I'm not saying he's like a 10 assists per game kind of guy who's going to run the offense, but he can make some good plays as a secondary, tertiary initiator there. And in transition, he's a good passer. And on the other end, he's been a really solid defender. He's drawing a lot of really tough matchups on the other end. I think against I'm blanking. The last game we played was against who, Joe? Remind me real quick.
Oklahoma?
OKC, yeah, against OKC, not only did they say, hey, go get us points, but they said, go stop Shai Gilgeous-Alexander.
Oh, man.
And to me, that shows a little bit of trust, right? Like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is an all-star in the making. He's had a really tough go of it alongside that really weak Oklahoma City Thunder roster. Like, that's a bad roster. You can say he has Horford. You can say he has George Hill, Darius Baisley and Mike Muscala aren't that great. And they're also starters. The rest of that supporting cast, not too good. So Lonnie going out there and trying to stop Shai and also having to carry the load on the offensive end, that shows me that Pop has a little bit more trust in him maybe than he had in years prior. And I'm really happy with this developmental track that he's on, because I think, we talked about, can he be a closer? I'm not 100% sold on it. We've seen him in that Houston game against the Rockets last year, the quote unquote Lonnie game where he went off right for 28 points.
Yeah.
He had, absolutely no hesitation, rising up from three, taking big shots. But I think he's one of those microwave players that, when they get hot, they're going to toss up heat check after heat check. And if it's going in, they're going to make you pay. But I also think if he's having an off night, he's more likely to just kind of take a back seat, be a little passive. And I don't know who that closer is. Once DeMar is gone, because I don't think DeMar is going to be here forever. Who is that closer? Could it be Lonnie? Maybe if he finds a little bit more consistency, could it be Keldon? I think Keldon's probably a more likely candidate, but it's possible that player's not even on the roster yet. It's very possible that guy just is not here yet. And maybe we see some growth from these Spurs, because we're 11 games into the season. We still got another 61 to go. Maybe somebody really steps up and shows us they can be that guy. But for now, I think that's kind of up in the air. As long as we have DeMar, we don't have to worry about it, but he's not going to be here forever.
Yeah. And this is going to be Lonnie Walker's third season, this 2020-21 season. And 11 games into the season, this is what he's averaging. He's averaging 14.1 points a game, 3.1 rebounds a game, 1.8 assists per game. His field goal shooting percentage is 43.5%. His three-point shooting percentage is 40.4%. His free throw shooting percentage, 76.9%. Those aren't some bad numbers, 11 games into the season, coming into your third year with the San Antonio Spurs, which, again, they have one of the hardest systems to learn in the NBA, because Coach Pop is always preaching defense, so it's a lot of being able to play defense, being able to get in the right positions, a lot of things you got to learn to get comfortable in this season. And I think when it's a system, and I really think that Lonnie Walker is showing his growth as a player and his comfort level with the San Antonio Spurs system. I think he's got it down pat now. His confidence is showing out there. So really, the ceiling is high for both of these young players that we have in both Lonnie Walker and Kelden Johnson, and it's exciting to watch. And the thing that I've alluded to this season, Noah, is I know that this is going to be a season of growth coming into this, to this 2020-21 NBA season. I don't expect the Spurs are going to make it a number one priority to make the playoffs. I think really what it is, it's a season of growth to get the younger players much needed experience so the team as a whole can get better. So I'm looking forward to seeing the growth out of this young core, especially Lonnie Walker and Kelden Johnson. What are your thoughts in closing here?
Yeah, well, I'll just kind of feed off of what you just said. So I think we're kind of somewhere in the middle between, wanting to see these young guys grow, or not us, but the Spurs,
Yes.
rather, wanting to see the young guys grow and trying to make the playoffs. Because I think as long as Greg Popovich is your head coach, the goal is going to be to make the postseason. I mean, I'm just not sure it makes a lot of sense to have Greg Popovich around for the beginning of a rebuild and then know he's not going to be there at the end. So I think they probably aren't seeing this as a rebuild. They probably see this as like, we're going to be getting these young guys experience, but we're going to keep these veterans in the game so that we can have some stability, so that we can make a push for the postseason. Because I think ultimately that's their goal. Would I like to see them in the postseason? Not particularly. I'm not really that interested in seeing the Spurs probably get knocked out of the first round by a better team. I'd rather see them just go all in on the young guys, say, here you go, let's figure it out, get you as much touches as possible, get you as much experience possible, and end up in the lottery in a really stacked 2021 draft class. But, I'm not in charge of the organization. I doubt they care what I think. But at the, when we look back at this season, I think we're going to say, hey, they did a pretty good job of developing guys. They did a good job of letting them have longer leashes. I mean, I mentioned it with Lonnie, but it's not just Lonnie. It's DeJounte, it's Lonnie, it's Keldon, even Devin Vassell. Though, honestly, when I look at Devin Vassell, he looks more like a veteran than he does a rookie. He doesn't really make any mistakes on the defensive end. I think he's probably our second smartest defender after Derek White. And the shots aren't falling right now, but they will. They'll eventually start falling.
Yeah.
So, the leash has been long with the young guys. I'd like to see Trey play a little bit. I think he's a very, very good player, very NBA ready player. Even if he's not a finished product, he could still contribute right away. But hey, that's just my opinion. And really, regardless, I'm just going to enjoy this season. I'm not coming into it with high expectations. I'm not saying they need to do X, Y, Z. I'm mostly trying to just enjoy what I'm seeing on the court, because that's, there's not a lot of seasons where you have the liberty to just go, what happens, happens. If you're a championship team like the Lakers, people are going to be mad if you don't win the title, right? If you're the worst team in the NBA, you don't get that number one pick, your fans are going to be sad you don't get the number one pick. But if you're somewhere in the middle like the Spurs, you kind of have that liberty as a fan to go, what happens, happens, and I'm going to take the good every single night and just try to enjoy that. And that's what I'm going to try to do.
Yeah, and that's where I'm at. I don't mind, as I stated before, the wins or the losses, as long as the team competes every night. There are going to be teams that you just don't match up well against because we just don't have the offensive power that some of these other teams, the upper echelon teams, have. And that's fine. I just want to see the growth out of the younger core, because as they get better, the team gets better as a whole. So, again, this is, for me, this is just a season of growth. And as you stated, whatever happens, happens. I'm just looking to see growth out of our young core. And, seeing FIBA Patty out there is a joy to watch. And if DeMar DeRozan, if this is his last season as a San Antonio Spur, so be it. But you got to tip your hat and have respect for what he's able to do out there on the court for this team. He battles and fights for this team every single night. Even if his shot might not be falling, he's still going up there. He's still battling. He's still trying to do what he can to get a win. You just love the competitive nature of when DeMar DeRozan, and I kind of got to say, a lot of Spurs fans sometimes, they really take him for granted. We got him in the trade with one Kawhi Leonard, but you look at what he's able to do this season, and you're just in awe of what he's able to do. And he's just a pure professional. Coming from Toronto, a place that he loved, from teammates that he had really, strong friendships with. A big change for him. And now coming into San Antonio and embracing this as his home and really going out there and producing for us. I mean, you can't say enough good things about DeMar DeRozan. He's just been the epitome of what it is to be a true professional out there on the court. I mean, what have you thought about him so far?
Oh, yeah. I mean, regardless of what criticisms or, I may have of DeMar DeRozan, I will say as a professional, he has been absolutely outstanding. You take a look at guys like James Harden or even Kawhi Leonard, and I know that we're probably still a little upset about Kawhi Leonard Spurs fans, but those guys didn't handle their situations that professionally. And I saw there was like an argument. Well, who handled it better? Was it Kawhi or was it James Harden? Who was the more professional? And I'm going to say, I don't care. I don't care who handled it better. I'm going to say DeMar DeRozan. DeMar DeRozan wasn't part of that conversation, but he needs to be. This guy, like you said, got traded from the only franchise he knew, from his best friend and Kyle Lowry. And he came in, went to training camp, bunkered down every single season, has left it out on the court, has been the leader of this team on the offensive end, has been a mentor to rookies and first, second, third year players. You know, I have nothing but respect for DeMar DeRozan. If he ends up leaving, you know, so be it. If he stays, so be it. But I will say I respect him as much as you can respect any player on this team, because he has been the consummate pro from day one since he got to San Antonio.
Yeah. So I'm just going to enjoy what I get out of him this season, you know, and just be happy that he was with the San Antonio Spurs. So as we bring this to a close, Noah, where can they go ahead and find all the great articles that you write about the San Antonio Spurs for Pounding the Rock?
Yeah, you can find my articles at Pounding the Rock. I'm doing a bunch of Spurs coverage there. It's breaking news. It's opinion articles, you know, deep dives into early season trends. So check that out. And they can also find me on Twitter at @N_Magaro, Magaro. And most of the time I'll follow you back. So go ahead and follow me and see what I'm tweeting, because I tend to think it's pretty fun to keep up with me during the games.
Oh, there you go. So, and also you can take a look at our good friend Ty Yeager. Ty also tweets out clips and stuff as well during game time when he has the time to do so. So make sure you go ahead and check him out as well. And you know, Noah, they do a podcast called At the Line, so make sure you check that out and listen to that. And you can also check out what I do, you know, because I post clips as well. And you can follow me at 2 Shots Podcast, and it's all spelled out, not the number 2, but TWO 2 Shots Podcast on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. Yes, we do have a YouTube channel. And we'd love for you to hit that subscribe button so you can, you know, go ahead and help us grow our user base there. So we'd be much appreciated. So for Noah Magaro-George, I'm Joe Garcia. Thank you for watching another episode of the 2 Shots Podcast. And like we always say, spread the love, stop the hate, be kind. We're out. Peace.